And good morning. It is Monday. It's January 9th, and this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. It's so great to be with you here. Happy Monday. Happy New Year. If you are now coming back into a full week of work, welcome back to the new year. Welcome back to everything that is happening in our news world and everything that is happening in our nation's backyard. This weekend, you know what I did? I shut everything off and I went on a long nature walk and spent time with my husband and our neighbors and our community. And it is so refreshing and so restoring to the soul of getting out, breathing in some sunshine, breathing in, hearing the birds chirp, hearing nature. It is refreshing, it's renewing, and it restores the soul. So I hope to each and every one of you, as we kick off this new week, it is January 9th, and there is so much ahead of us this week. You know what? Over the weekend, McCarthy, he is the new Speaker of the House after 15 rounds of voting. Yes, and guess who else finally made it to the border? I guess they had to draw a dotted map or send carrier pigeon to get Biden to the border. You know, I heard that this morning. And then there was a couple other things that really kind of, I listened on my radio shows this morning, and I was watching some of the news cycles and checking in on Twitter and just seeing what was going in and on and around the world. I really didn't miss that much. You know what? Speaker McCarthy is in, and I hope that, the Republicans do as they promised, because you know what? When those dollar signs and that money gets thrown right in front of you, something else changes. Your whole perspective changes. So I really hope that they pull up their big boy pants and big girl pants and get to work. That's what we put you there for. So as we head into today, like I mentioned to you on Friday, it's just going to be a Monday and Thursday podcast going forward. And I'm looking forward to bringing you special features each and every week. And you know what? On Thursday, we have a great new guest coming to us. I'm so thankful to my friends at Young Voices and also the Libertas Institute. They came to me and said, hey, we got this great person on education talking all things about our children and the next generation and preventing them from indoctrination of the trends and the alphabet city. And so we have a new guest coming to our show this Thursday. I'm so excited to introduce you to that new guest, talking all things education. And also this morning, we are just awaiting. I have introduced you guys to Jack Maxey. He is the Hunter Biden laptop king, as it says on his Getter page. And he's going to be talking to us this morning. You know what? Remember when I talked to you guys on Friday about just your viewership of all the YouTube and Rumble interviews I've posted, and Jack Maxey was one of the top ones. You guys really spoke to Jack Maxey and everything that he's been bringing to the table. So I want you to go to his Getter account. It's Jack Maxey, and I'm going to post it up on the screen here as soon as we bring him over. But we're going to do a recap of our two interviews we did before the new year. And then we're also going to talk about what's ahead with the House Oversight Committee and what that looks like. Are they going to be able to investigate and have Hunter Biden testify to everything that was found on the laptop? So we're going to go over a timeline and then talk with Jack more in depth about what is ahead in 2023. And without further ado, Jack just popped over, and I'm going to bring him over to the show. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry I'm a little slow today. I got into DC last night at about 1 a.m. and then had to do little computer things till about 4 o'clock this morning. But I think your audience will be happy to know that all the networks want copies now.
Oh, that's great to know.
All of them.
So they finally woke up, huh?
Well, my sense is that something is about to break. I think that everybody's going to try and get ahead of the ball, if you will. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you listened to Congressman Perry yesterday. He is running hot about the FBI and some of the things that the security apparatus has been doing to violate our constitutional rights over the last several years, and now is in an obvious way in your face. Mm-hmm. I'm hopefully going to meet with several of the members.
Good.
Probably not this week, but maybe early next week. Mm-hmm. And going to have a meeting up here with guy who's really been a tremendous support for me the whole time. He's already testified. He's one of the witnesses. Um, one of my confidential informants.
Okay.
So I think that things are all moving in the right direction, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I heard in your intro, I was listening in the background, and you were describing what are next steps. What are the next things that have to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I think number one, I think they need to be educated up on some of the real things that are occurring and some of the things that they need to understand. And I think myself and another guy are going to try and help them do that,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when it comes to some of the nuanced things that were going on inside China.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the participants, I would include there the Zheng family of Shanghai. We can
Mm-hmm.
connect them to Hunter, his father.
Mm-hmm.
Deng Xiaoying is Hunter's secretary in Beijing. Uh, Direct connection between the Biden family and Fu Gao, the Chinese CDC, who was a
Mm-hmm.
partner with Metabiota in the Wuhan lab.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter was the one who made the introduction. Fu Gao, a senior member of the sort of Dr. Fauci of China, if you will.
Uh-huh.
Zheng Xiaoying, the Beijing secretary slash Biden family handler in China, his husband. Uh, these are very strong connections. Things like
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to put together. We're now finding, I think, some very frightening connections between some senior people in the advisory capacity and intel in the in this present government.
Okay.
Creation of those things. I think we're going to connect Susan Rice and likely some other big names. Um, yes, this is all very frightening stuff, and I think if these guys just have the courage to do their duty, we save this country.
Well, could you give my audience who may have missed part one or part two of our episodes from late last year, could you give them just a brief timeline as to you receiving the documents, how you got a hold of them, and how the process in which you submitted things? I love how you opened up with saying, you know what, now everybody's wanting to kind of get on board. But why do you think? I want to talk about the timeline and why do you think it took so long to get to this point?
Okay, really quick timeline. I was
Yeah.
Steve Bannon's co-host of War Room Pandemic, kind of chief of research for him for a couple years. And so Rudy gets the copy of the laptop
Right.
sometime in late August. Everybody to go back. He left it at a repair shop in Delaware in 2019. In between Rudy getting it in August of 20 or August, essentially being informed of it in late August 2020.
Right.
Physically, Rudy himself taking possession of it first week in October. Uh, they wanted someone to look at it, and so they sent a copy down to me to start doing some of the real research. And I got that, I don't know, I'm guessing, I want to say the 14th of October,
Hmm.
2020. And I began doing just that. And I've been doing that ever since. I'm the one who gave it to the Daily Mail, gave it to the Swedes because Hunter had
Right.
a spy in their embassy complex. Gave it to Washington Post, Grassley, and the Judiciary
Right.
Committee.
Right.
Uh, I haven't given this thing to Daily Beast or anything like that. It's only been to top tier news organizations because I realized that other people are going to try and profit from it, like
Right.
the clown show at Marco
Right.
Polo. And realize in the real world, if you don't have CNN, Washington Post, etc., covering
Mhm.
this thing, it's never going to get covered.
Right.
So uh, that's the way I've operated. I think most of the major stories came from me that were broken in the Daily Mail last year.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where we are today. Now,
Hmm.
earlier this year, I went to Switzerland, did a forensic survey of the thing, found more on the erased side than was actually on the physically open side. And now, surprising news organizations want the erased side. And I'm warning them because I think there are things on there that are likely going to meet the statute for child pornography.
I
Because
was going to ask you that. I was afraid that you were going to say that.
yes, I mean, to tell you what's on the erase side, to give you some examples, when we first start finding the photographs, of which there are 80,000 erased images that were recovered, all in high definition. They're not, it's not like some fuzzy thumbnail.
Right.
These
Right.
were all enhanced back to the level they would have been when they were taken.
Hmm.
The first photographs that we saw were very young girls, including his niece, all clothed, looks apparently like they're all schoolmates,
Okay.
doing highly sexualized things to each other through their clothes, but they
Okay.
look to be about 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
Um, so we had to stop. I said, we can't look forward. We found another, say, 150,000 emails.
Okay.
We found another couple 100,000 text messages that I've never gone through, and 72 hours of video. Now, to compare, there were 28,000 images on the side we could see without any finessing,
Okay.
and there were 21.5 hours of video. We now have 72 hours of video and almost triple the number of photographs. So these were things Hunter was intent upon erasing. Some of the erased text messages were really frightening. I think they're what led to my programmer in Switzerland, I think, really having almost like a mental breakdown. He could not understand why no one would do anything about the child abuse. And
I remember you saying that. I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah.
What
So,
did what did the video expose? The 72 hours of
well,
video.
when we first saw the images of the kids, I called a very top attorney who has specialized in child abuse and child exploitation, trafficking, etc.
Uh-huh.
A wonderful American woman, and she'd been advising me because we knew this was likely things that we might find.
Hmm.
And she said, "Listen, if you see anything, you're going to have to take the whole package down to the police station." So she said, "Do you have to go through it to recover it?" I said, "No, we don't." And in fact, I told my programmer when, again, it was the middle of the night. I don't know why computer guys are like vampires, but I have to stay awake during daylight hours too. So whenever I have to deal with them, I'm like, okay, I don't have any sleep. But so she said, look, I knew enough to stop because I knew if I saw it, I'd have to do something, right? And she
Right.
said, look, you really under law, if you see something that is obviously pornographic, you have to immediately go to the police, no matter where you are. If you're in Switzerland, you got to go to the police.
Hmm.
I will say, when I did recover that, I attempted to make contacts with the Swedish police through some people over there.
Hmm.
I attempted to get the Swiss to look at it. Nobody
Yeah.
wanted to see it. I mean, because
They didn't want to touch it because they knew.
I said, well, look. I mean, does anybody really want to be like, hey, I'm the little Swiss police department. Yeah, let me take on the president of the United States.
Yeah. 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 Touche. Okay.
So, but now, hopefully, one major U.S. media company has had it all for about 8 months now, or
Okay.
9 months. The recovered portion of it, I'm talking.
Right.
So has a major European media company, and now another major U.S. media company. It's partially why I'm in Washington D.C.
Okay.
Wants a copy of all of the recovered material too. Now, remember a year ago, or 9 months ago, Maxie was crazy and all this stuff was impossible, and there's
I
no
know. I
material.
know.
He's a liar and a charlatan and everything else, and you know
I watched. I was
now
watching.
everybody wants the recovered material. So I'm guessing the earnestness that I'm seeing in the last week is because one of the other media companies that has it is probably going to break some story on it. So
Okay.
they all want to be out in front of it, which is okay. And I know this is a long slog, and people are frustrated, and they're like, Max, he didn't release it. He didn't do what he said he would do. Well, I didn't do that because there was national security stuff on there. And
Right.
under legal advice, I don't know. What if there's an attachment of some photograph? I mean, when we found all the new stuff, it was frightening. I mean, we talk about Metabiota, who is a prime contractor in the
Hmm.
Ukrainian biolabs. and is a prime character inside the Wuhan lab in partnership with the Chinese
Mhm.
CDC, a relationship that the Biden family created.
Mhm.
Uh, there are serious national security issues. I mean, there were two emails that mentioned the word metabiota in the side of the disk that everyone could see in the emails. There were 254 emails that
Mhm.
mentioned metabiota in the erase side.
Mhm.
It's
Okay.
clear they describe it as a secret DoD project in
Right.
Ukraine. The money's always going to come through. Interestingly, one of the emails described from a Metabiota executive to Hunter and his partner Devin Archer how one of the main reasons that we're doing this, we can use this to suppress Russian cultural influence inside Ukraine and isolate the Russians and continue to promote Ukraine and weaken Russia. I
Mhm.
don't know why that would be a scientific project for a laboratory, but
Right.
it just shows you how connected all of this stuff is. And
Mhm. Mhm.
uh, we've got to make it stop. These actors inside CIA,
Yeah.
FBI,
Yeah.
really CIA and State Department have been global chaos makers for
How
really
long? How
life.
long? Yeah. I was gonna say, how far does this go back, do you think?
I think it goes back to George Bush Sr. and him taking over the CIA after the Church Committee hearings.
Mhm.
Well, we now know that we're having the hearings, and the
Right.
whole time CIA and FBI were surveilling both the Congress people and
Mhm.
their staffs who were
Mhm.
engaged in those hearings. And then they bring George Bush in. They always bring the Bushes in when Skull and Bones has to clean up things, right? And I think that Bush showed up, and the new program for CIA was, we're never going to have another church committee hearings.
Mm.
Right? You guys got to learn how to, lie and cheat, and cover up for the over people with responsibility for oversight.
Mhm.
And I think that that's happened. I think one of the problems that we had, even with Bush, right? He was the first real political appointee of the intel agency,
Right. Right.
and it's kind of become that way ever since. Rather it used to be journeyman professionals in spycraft who got to a level where they were the obvious next candidate, and now it's who will do the bidding of the party. I mean, a perfect example of that is Leon Panetta,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
And again, Mike Pompeo was a perfect example of that, and Pompeo proved to be no different than any of the others.
Mhm.
And very clear proof of that for all your listeners is Mike Pompeo is head of CIA. He's going to go clean it up and drain the swamp, right? And
Yeah.
then Tillis leaves the State Department, and Pompeo, having done nothing to change CIA, is now going to move to the State Department where he's going
Right.
to drain the swamp. But he replaces himself at the CIA, and this is the last 15 months of the Trump administration,
Mhm.
with a woman named Gina Haspel.
Mhm.
Gina Haspel was chief of station in London when they ran the Steele dossier,
Mhm.
Miss Hood, Cambridge professor scam to try and craft the Russian collusion narrative and keep Trump from being elected in 2016. So, how in God's name does she become the director of CIA?
Right.
And obviously, Trump didn't know, but Pompeo knew,
He did. Yeah.
and yet he put her there. And we see this over and over again. Somebody needs to ask General Flynn, what did he know about those biolabs and when did he know it?
I was
Because
gonna ask you about that.
they were created while he was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Mhm.
Uh, People, it's so much worse than you can imagine, and it's almost as if they're laughing at us.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, with this new Congress and McCarthy after 15 rounds now speaker, do you foresee oversight getting Biden, both the Biden brother and Hunter? Do you think we will see them testifying now with that in place? And then also what you said with this major news organization wanting to break a story, do you think it'll push it to get them to testify. Do you think we'll see that this year? Do you think we'll see that in the next couple months?
Well, put it this way, they couldn't get Bannon to testify at the January 6th hearing, so I doubt probably you're going to be able to get Hunter to testify, right? There's plenty of
Mhm.
ways to delay testimony. But the difference is we now have multiple former intel officers, FBI agents, and we have the physical evidence. And you don't necessarily have to get Hunter to testify in
Mhm.
order to prove Hunter's guilt.
Mhm.
And you don't have to get Joe to testify to prove that he is in effect the leader of a crime family.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that people to understand the Bidens really are a sideshow here, right?
Right.
The Bidens are just grifters who, if the local Wawa in Delaware offered
Mhm.
Joe free coffee, he'd take it, right? I
Right.
mean, these people, walk around with their palms up, expecting people to drop coins into them. It's why they have all these BS jobs. The real target of the American people's ire should be the CIA,
Mhm.
FBI,
FBI.
Department of Justice, and the
Mhm.
State Department, organizations that enabled these crimes to occur. And remember, the Bidens aren't the only participants in their crimes. Many of them are foreign nationals, oligarchs from Latin America to Kazakhstan, Chinese communists of the highest level. I mean, Hunter calls his partner the spy chief of China.
Mhm.
And, that's Hunter's words, not mine.
Right. Right.
Um, so I think that things are starting to move. One thing I would say is that everybody has to remember the whole of Western media hated Nixon, and it took 2.5 years to get a outcome for Watergate.
Mhm.
So we're really 2 years into this,
Mhm.
and if these guys in the House are angry enough to fight back, we will win. Uh,
Mhm.
and if
Do
they're
you
not angry enough to fight back, then we again, those of us who are in the fight and properly in the fight, not trying to make a buck here, trying to save
Right.
our country,
Right.
uh, will adapt our strategy to another level, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this can be taken care of in foreign locations as well. And I remind everybody that there are multiple copies of the original hard drive and the erased material in,
Mhm.
uh, you know,
Eh,
several different continents at this point.
right. As you meet with members of Congress and you have assuming a close-knit group of members who are really in tune to what you're working on, I go back to the human side of the fact that there are children, innocent children who were found on the erased and not the erased, very evident of what you found on the laptop. The human side of it says these members of Congress, whether men or women who are serving, who took the oath, they're fathers, they're mothers. And I sit there and say, from that standpoint, do you think that aside from the intelligence piece, aside from the corruptness of the CIA, the FBI, and all the intelligence agencies, because they didn't do anything about what was exposed, do you see more of the human element piece to it that members of Congress are going to fight with you because of the fact that could have been their daughter, that could have been their son, in prevention of that? Do you see where I'm going with that? Just
I do, and I think the more that people spend time and understand, particularly if you read the text between
Mhm.
Hunter and his family concerning sexual abuse allegations of his niece, Hunter's communications between his attorney, Hunter's communications between his attorney and his therapist and his sister-in-law and his father.
Right.
I mean, at one point, Hunter's complaining to his father. Now, these are the allegations. This is how Hunter describes the allegations against him to those close to him.
Mhm.
Uh, Masturbating in front of this child, watching pornography with this child, sexting naked with this child, and smoking crack cocaine in front of this child. These are the allegations. And, it's ironic that as soon as anybody on the left is involved, from Epstein to Hunter Biden, this whole, trust the woman, hashtag Me Too stuff just goes
Right.
straight out the window.
Yeah.
And here's a really great story on the recovered side. And if anybody remembers, there was a mirror image of an iPad and a mirror image of one of Hunter's cell phones that was released on 4chan in July of last summer.
Mhm.
This was done by my Swiss programmer, who's a good guy, but I mean, literally, I think he had a mental breakdown because he couldn't believe that the world was covering up. He could believe that the world was covering up the corruption, but he
Mhm.
couldn't believe that the world was covering up the child abuse. I mean, it emotionally scarred him, and I've said it before. That is the hardest stuff to understand.
Mhm.
I get that there might be some ancillary reason why, we're not prosecuting Hunter for all the Chinese things and whatever, and there's a little corruption and palms are getting greased. But I said it once before, if a bank robber is escaping from, Anytown, USA, and the
Right.
posse's going one direction and he's going the other, and he sees a young girl getting raped on the side of the street, I think he's going to stop his car and try to stop it,
You
even
would
if that
think.
means he's going to jail. I mean, your average bank robber has more morals than the FBI. And we
Right.
can prove that
Yeah.
because the FBI abandoned all the young women on the US Olympic team for 5 years. 5 years.
That's a long
They
time.
abandoned Hunter's niece because they've had all the laptop stuff for almost a year before Rudy did. They abandoned, and then you saw in July of 2021, the FBI special agent who was in charge of child exploitation, pornography, etc., in the Southeast
Mhm.
was arrested for abusing two little girls in Louisiana by a Louisiana sheriff. That's another side of the coin that people should understand, and I
Mhm.
hopefully will be able to go into more detail. And I'm just trying to be respectful of them as they've been respectful of me. But a major state crime lab has had all of this since last July.
Mhm.
I sat down with their child exploitation expert. I sat down with a computer forensic expert. I submitted both the original laptop and the erased material to their crime lab.
Mhm.
No one has contacted me back to be like, Maxie, you're an absolute charlatan. This is nonsense. No. I think they're probably doing a thorough investigation. They probably have a crime lab that is the peer, if not better than the FBI.
Mhm.
And I think that the walls are closing in on these people. I think this is
Mhm.
a problem, and it
Yeah.
will become inescapable at some point.
So are we going to I'm gonna take a drastic, question here and say potentially not. Biden says, he's looking at 2024, but do we have a sitting United States president who who was a part of a lot of these these crimes that you found on the laptop? Is that Are those impeachable offenses? I mean, will we see that happen this year? A potential impeachment aspect to his presidency in this part of its term.
I think the problem with an impeachment is that we don't control the Senate.
Mhm.
So if it is an impeachment, they had better make it very, very tight, and they had better do it properly. So I think that may be a hard leap, but I think all of us who've ever had somebody in their family who suffered from dementia,
Yeah.
Joe Biden's days are numbered, whether he's impeached or, he's removed for other reasons. I don't think this guy's very functional, and I think that's very clear to most
Yeah.
objective observers. I think that the Democratic Party is in a real dilemma in that nobody, including the Democratic leadership, likes Kamala Harris. As much as he is a disaster, this is a woman who does not have dementia and can't keep her foot out of her mouth. And I could just see her announcing, some global mishap and laughing on the camera like she always does in awkward ways. I think they've got to Spiro Agnew uh,
Mhm.
her. And what I mean by that for the youngsters out there, Spiro Agnew was Nixon's vice president.
Mhm.
And it became clear at a certain point that Nixon was going to get replaced,
Mhm.
and nobody could stomach the idea of Spiro Agnew becoming president. and Spiro was 10,000 times more qualified than Kamala Harris.
Mhm.
So, everybody has to get into survival mode at some point. If I'm
Mhm.
XYZ media company, at some point I have to maintain my credibility. If that means I
Yeah,
arrive late at the party, then so be it. But I'm
right.
I'm more interested at the end of the day in my survival than an individual candidate in the party that we overtly support.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that even the Democratic Party is going to have to come to a conclusion that some of these revelations roll out, that their survival is on the line.
Mhm.
So, and the Republican Party's survival is on the line. Think about it. We would have had the Senate if they had been running on the laptop.
Right.
It's so darn frustrating when 2 weeks after the election um, you have Comer and you have Jordan come out with a
Mhm.
very impressive press conference describing some of their targets, and uh, they should have done that in June, for crying out loud, and we would have had a majority in both houses. But I, I
Right.
I don't understand the reluctance, but I think that now there's enough anger in that house. The rule changes that were allowed to be pushed through by the bravery of people like Matt Getz, and
Mhm.
hat tip to Matt Getz. I mean,
Yes, I agree with you.
there's a guy who stuck to his guns.
Yes, you did.
And remember, it was, I think, uh, McCarthy who said Trump should step down after January 6th, and then you
Yep.
have Trump like, oh, McCarthy's my boy. I mean,
Well, let me ask you this. I heard a couple of other interviews you did more recently, and the question was asked, and I had already thought about the question, and I didn't ask you in our part one and part two, but I'm going to ask you in this. Where was Trump in all of this laptop?
I don't know. I will say I tried to brief him. I was in Florida right after I left Bannon in January 2021. So in early February, I contacted some of the staff that went with him to Mar-a-Lago and offered to come over and give him everything that I was in the process of, giving to the Daily Mail. Let him know I could have told him a lot of things. I mean, let's not forget, I tried to get it to the director of national intelligence, and
Mhm.
Garrett Ziegler showed up, out of the blue. I don't know which three-letter alphabet agency he's being run by. And also, further ironically, to try and pull at my heartstrings to give himself legitimacy and his like nervousness when he arrived at the house. He told me about, oh, it's because I was sexually abused as a child. Well, the statutes in any place that he grew up were longer than he had years under his belt.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was a BS story, but clearly,
yeah, it sounds like it.
where it meant business, that person should be getting prosecuted right now.
Mhm.
Um, so there have been a lot of smoke and mirrors. There have been many attempts to deflect from the reality of what's going on. I think one of the things that is very clear, I came out and attacked the intel agencies from day one. I mean, one of
Mhm.
the reasons I left Bannon was his threat to, quote, fire me if I ever mentioned FBI and Hunter Biden in the same sentence again.
Why? What was the why was that necessary? I mean, what's Steve Bannon?
Well,
Just
I don't know. He's besties with Miles Guo. We now find out that Miles Guo is an FBI informant. You have to remember Steve was under the sword of Damocles for the potential prosecution for We Build the Wall.
Mhm.
Trump didn't win, so I bet his focus, went to getting a pardon. Now, what I can't stomach about that is there were four guys involved, and one of them's a veteran who gave three limbs to this country and had
Mhm.
three baby daughters. And for whatever reason, Trump chose to only pardon Bannon, who I believe was the architect of that fraud,
Right.
and not pardon Brian Colfage. I mean, I'm sorry, if there's only one guy who's going to get it, you give it to the veteran with one
Right.
arm, a wheelchair, and three baby daughters at home. That's the
Right.
one guy you don't send to jail.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's not what Trump did. And as far as I know, I may be proven wrong. I don't think that Steve was trying to get Brian a pardon. These are tactical errors that were made by Trump on numerous occasions. I also think it's very important for everyone to understand that Donald Trump could have pardoned the 600 protesters from January 6th. And for selfish reasons, he decided not to do that. And the people like saying, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't. No, yes, you can, because Jimmy Carter pardoned between 120 and
Mhm,
106,000
mhm.
draft dodgers and people who missed movement and went AWOL during the Vietnam War. These are felonies, right? And
Right.
he did a blanket pardon for all of them with
Mhm.
carve outs for people who committed violence, but uh, it's able to be done. The only thing is that likely the turncoats in the Republican Party in the Senate were going to convict Trump,
Mhm.
and his sole punishment would be essentially that he couldn't run for office anymore.
Right, right.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, if your choice as a military leader is abandon your battalion and you'll make colonel, don't abandon your battalion and you're going to retire as a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah,
That's not. That's This is what
yeah,
leaders do. You sacrifice for your people.
right,
They
right.
rely on you, and you rely on them. It's a two-way street.
It is. Can we have Dwight Eisenhower back, please?
Yeah, well, and a sad thing, Eisenhower warned us all about this. He warned us
He did.
about the military-industrial complex, and this is the obscene thing. All these flag rank officers, not all of them, but a great number of them, are sitting on the boards of directors of the very companies that underpin the military industrial complex. And, they're in business to make profits. And, what is the best market environment for a defense contractor to make profits? It's
Mhm.
war. And
Right.
we've been basically in a kind of war ever since Gulf War One, and certainly
Yes.
over the last 20 years, we've been in a hot war. And again, another example, Gina Haspel, who testified that, oh, I thought it was an FBI operation. Misfud, if anyone remembers him, the Turkish guy, no one can seem to find a picture of,
Mhm.
always a CIA asset. And she testified that, oh, I thought he worked for FBI. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
Because remember, Misfud the Turk,
Mhm.
Gina was at one time chief of station in Ankara in
Mhm.
Turkey.
Mhm.
So she lied before the Congress, and now she sits on the board of directors of British Aerospace. Why? So she can now promote global war and chaos and profit directly?
Right.
This is obscene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's not forget the 51 Intel professionals who I've always described as the real election interference,
Mhm.
who uh, wrote that letter on the 19th of October in Politico, declaring it in their best estimation to be
Mhm.
Russian influence operation.
Mhm.
This was 2 weeks before the election. There was
Right.
not another article published about Hunter Biden's laptop in any major media until the Daily Mail began publishing in April of the following year, because I flew a copy out to them on March 3rd and
Mhm.
spent nearly 12 hours going through it, and then dozens of hours since
Mhm.
helping them in their research.
Excuse me. Do you think the intelligence agencies, there will be a clean sweep as things come forth and Congress really pushes the button with this new Republican Congress? And also with, as you say, that news agency going to be breaking this later this week or into next week. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it will be a cleaning of the swamp, even, using, you know, Trump's terminology? Do you think that will start to happen? Will it be a process over time? What are your thoughts on that with the intelligence agencies?
My guess is the fall guy here is going to be the FBI.
Okay.
Um, Remember, it was the counterintelligence group at the FBI that buried Hunter's laptop. That was the
Mhm,
group that was run at the time by Bill Prystap and Peter Strzok.
mhm,
Uh, Everybody remembers Peter, the bulging vein in his forehead
yeah,
guy from the hearings,
mm,
the first impeachment. Well, think about it. Peter Strzok had a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop, which was filled with exculpatory material concerning Trump's allegations about Ukraine, etc.
mhm,
And rather than turn over that exculpatory material, he testified against the president.
Mhm.
Now, irony of ironies, most of Hunter's criminal activity for which he could be prosecuted easily, the money laundering
Right.
things, were all run through an SEC registered broker dealer called Rosemont Seneca. And I've put people in jail for these violations, and Hunter gets a complete pass on all of this. Now, on the 21st of January, 2021,
Mhm.
as one of Joe Biden's first appointments, he puts a woman named Melissa Hodgman as director of SEC enforcement, i.e., the person who would have to refer Hunter's crimes to the Department of Justice for
Mhm.
prosecution.
Mhm.
And surprise, surprise, that's Peter Strzok's wife,
Surprise. Pin drop.
right? I mean, they really don't care. They're so in your face. I highly recommend people read an article that Lee Smith wrote 4 or 5 days ago on Tablet,
Okay.
based on the participation of the intel agencies in this kind of soft coup
Okay.
for a long, long time. And it's an outstanding article. And
Okay. I'll
probably
post it.
2 years ago, I was talking to Lee about this as I'm going through the laptop and just finding all kinds of stuff. And I just respect him as an intellect. And I said, Lee, we've got a two-tier justice system. He said, no,
Mhm.
no, brother, you got it wrong. He said, it's not a two-tier justice system. It's those that are targeted, guilty or not,
Mhm.
and those who get a pass. And I think he's correct in that regard.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another example of just how in your face they are. They There's a guy who sits on the board of Burisma with Hunter named Kofor Black. He comes
Mhm.
onto the board, I believe, in early 2016. Joe Biden is still president. Kofor Black was a long-term case officer in the CIA, worked in Khartoum, later was transferred over to Riyadh, where Brennan was in Saudi.
Mhm.
And Kofor Black sits on the board of directors. There are dozens of documents signed by Kofor Black, signed by Hunter Biden, signed by Devin Archer, and the executives of Burisma. And you're telling me that a senior retired case officer from the FBI sits on, from the CIA,
Mhm.
sits on that board with Hunter Biden, and nobody knows anything?
Yeah, that doesn't
It's
equal out.
insanity.
Yeah, it is. I wanna go back to the human side for a hot second because the human trafficking piece and the sex slavery and the child porn really upsets me from the last two interviews we did. I want to ask you with the children that were doing all of these acts for Hunter, where were their parents? Where was there any action taken by the parents, or were they given hush money? Where were the parents in all of this?
Well, I don't know that, and again, I only looked at like 25 pictures that were these girls doing these sexualized things to each other through their clothes. There's Vish Burra reminded me late last night that there's another picture in there where you can't really see their heads, and they're all in what looks like a school bathroom, and one girl has her shirt lifted up.
Mhm.
Um, there's some really awful stuff. There's stuff that might not meet the statute on the visible side, but when we immediately the very first pictures we saw in the recovered were little girls doing things that like their parents would not be pleased with,
Mhm.
and somehow they're on Hunter's devices. I mean, they're on there enough that he had to hit delete,
Right, right.
and this was very disturbing. Yes, it's emotionally and spiritually difficult, but I don't know that the parents knew about it. I mean, for example, Hunter gets accused of the abuse of his niece in the spring of 2018,
Right.
and I think this is partially because his uh, uh, Haley Biden, the mother of this child, who Hunter turned into a drug addict in her grief over her husband Bo's death,
Mhm.
and the she's now sobered up. She's straightened out her life and trying to fix herself by 2018. And as she's coming out of her fog of depravity that Hunter led her into, she discovers this stuff, and like any good mother, she makes the accusation. I mean, Hunter is clearly under the new family guidelines, internal family guidelines, not allowed to be alone with any minor child in the family without his father present. And so whether we think it's serious or not, the Biden family certainly thought it was serious. And
Right. Right.
what's interesting, one of the last conversations that you can actually see, and this is still on the visible side, Hunter's talking about how if anyone finds out about these allegations, Dad, my life is ruined. And it never seems to be any concern for the child, although
Right.
he does apologize to her in text for all the horrible things I've done to you.
There's not enough money in the world that can get that child healing. I mean,
No, and furthermore, the thing that Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Kerik did as their first act when they got the laptop, before they ever gave it to me, they I think it was the afternoon before they gave it to me, they went down to Delaware and hand delivered a copy of all of this material to the Delaware State Police Child Protective Unit, and
mhm,
they never did a welfare check. I mean, if Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, the educator, and Ashley, the social worker's sister, who were all aware of these allegations, under Delaware state law, any Delaware citizen is required to inform the police about
mhm.
suspicion of child abuse. But it becomes a class one felony for anybody who's involved in education or social
Right.
work or a health
Right.
care to not inform, and nobody did. Nobody checked up on this little girl. In fact, we found out last spring that the Delaware State Police handed it over to the FBI. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, so delayed, but that poor child and those who are also part of who are his victims, the mental health component, the spiritual component, the emotional component, and the damage that's done, we may not know for years. We may not hear, and there may be. I'm just thinking there will be payoffs from the Biden, family to those families who were devastated by, these kids. Will these kids commit suicide? Will they go on to, have, drug addictions?
well, listen, let's pray that this person is a strong person, and
Right.
but more terrifying is, what does it say about a society, uh, and particularly our and this is, I have to get this out, our premier law enforcement
Right.
doing nothing.
Right.
This is a broken system.
Mhm.
If American men can turn their back on little girls, right?
Right.
I don't know what we've come to as a country if that's the case, but it's not the country I was raised to believe in.
No, no, it's not. I have just about 5 minutes left until the show ends. Can you give a breakdown, since you were in Washington, D.C. this week, can you kinda give a breakdown of some of the members? Are you allowed to say of some of the
No,
members?
I mean, it's all being set up right now. I
Okay.
came up here initially to give a copy to this news agency, which I'll
Okay.
do, probably within the hour or so.
Okay.
And I also came up here because one of my confidential informants and I, prior to that agency or news organization contacting me, were interested in coming up and forcing the recovered material, the erased material into the committees. This has been the problem. I mean, getting these guys to take things is difficult.
Right.
Um, but I think the courage is there now. And the guy who's going to be here with me probably, I think the meetings will actually be early next week now,
Okay. Okay.
uh, because they've been so swamped with
Right. With McCarthy.
electing
Yeah.
McCarthy and all the rest of it.
Right.
They're just getting their kind of stuff in order. But
Mhm.
I would hope that I will meet with, certainly I have one name that everyone knows that I'm meeting with, and I'm hopeful that I'm going to get all the others too.
Okay.
And that's the plan. And my confidential informant has already testified twice. He's the guy who I think Jim Jordan called, oh, and now we've got number 15. And people are getting courage to come forward. It took him
Mhm.
a long time to think that he could be safe in doing this.
Mhm.
Um, but he's been literally, I want you guys to know, I haven't done this alone. I have had some of the bravest, best retired US Intel guys
Mhm.
in my corner
Mhm.
every single step of the way.
Mhm.
And one in particular with lots of experience in China has been the guy who's come forward. And he's the guy with, uh, he's a fact witness to Joe
Mhm.
Biden's participation in some of these business deals,
Mhm.
almost on a much more granular level than anything Bobulinski could conceive.
Mhm.
And so, listen, I think courage is rising. I want the American people to look around. I don't care if you're in the, windswept Dakotas or,
Mhm.
in Ohio or wherever. Just look around at the tree-lined streets, these farms, these ranches, these, big bands of highway that stretch from here to there, the locomotives screaming across the plains. We built this place.
Yeah, we did.
We're tough
You
people.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
high time we start acting like it because it's in your DNA, right?
Mhm.
Get rid of the dress and the makeup, and uh, and realize that really you guys are American men and women.
Mhm.
You carved a wilderness into the most magnificent country that the history of this world has ever seen.
Yes.
And here we are, kind of like, oh, nothing's gonna happen. Nobody's gonna fight back against those bad people. Well, you're gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention to you as you take the hill, as you charge the hill, is surrounding, and I know that you're a veteran, is surrounding yourself with some of those powerful combat veterans who were elected to Congress. Because if one thing is for sure, they are courage, they are resilient. You have so many amazing members of Congress who have served and understand what it means to serve this great nation. And you know what? I One thing I love about seeing being a wife of a veteran and being a veteran spouse is when the chips fall, they are the first ones to get up and go take it down, fight for people, fight for humanity, fight for this great nation. And so as you take the hill, I just want to encourage you to surround yourself, as you know, with those powerful combat veterans who will fight. They know
Yeah,
what it is to take the oath.
and I know everybody loves, like, oh, Maxie's a veteran. I am, but I mean, I never saw anything. I mean, my military career was completely unremarkable in every regard. But I, I love this country. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the only reason I'm a veteran. I mean, you don't. Most people, you go through 4 years of college. You're highly educated. You spend a lot of money. I would say 99% of my peers at Yale ended up on Wall Street or somewhere else. But I wanted to go serve. I mean, it's a great honor. And in
Mhm.
fact, what I'm going through right now, which has not always been pleasant, is in a way a great honor. I mean,
Mhm.
I've been at my personal Valley Forge now for almost 2 years. And I feel honored that God put this in my hands
Mhm.
because I think He knew that I would do something.
And you certainly have. On that note, I am going to ask my audience to lift you up in prayer, lift up those victims in prayer, because the power of prayer is most important through all of this. And once things start breaking, I'd love to have you come back, do another segment with us. And I am excited to hear everything that you do as you head to the hill, charge the hill, and basically expose the truth. I love the fact that you are exposing the truth and basically revealing the book of lies and revealing and exhibiting what has been taking place since the first Bush administration when it comes to the intelligence agencies, but also exposing what is happening to our precious children and removing that billion-dollar industry of sex slavery, because you are hitting the nail on the head when it comes to that. So thank you so much for what you're doing, Jack Maxey.
Thank you very much. And thank you for listening to me. And God bless. And people, be optimistic. This is America. We don't lose. Once
No,
we
we
know
don't.
who the enemy is, they're done.
Exactly. And what I'm going to do is I've been having your Getter account go across the screen the whole time. So for all of those who are tuning in, they can follow you on Getter, follow all of your updates. And if we will just keep an eye out as news starts to break and make sure everybody looks up Jack Maxey and hears his upcoming interviews, because there's more to come. And I know that for a fact. So Jack, many blessings to you. Stay safe and we'll be praying for you. Thank you for all
All
you
right.
do.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
For all those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. We are just about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. It is Monday, January the 9th. And I tell you what, I'm so grateful for the service of Jack Maxey and what he's doing for our nation as he charges the Hill this coming week, as he meets with members of Congress and those who have been privileged to the Hunter Biden laptop. The erased aspects and also what is to come. And I want you guys to stay tuned. Make sure you follow Jack Maxey on Getter. And if you have not done so, go and look up Jack Maxey and see all of his other interviews. He has been on the show twice now. He is on my Rumble and YouTube accounts at Common Sense America with Eden Hill. And also you can find him here in this episode. It will be posted on EdenGordonMedia.com as well. For all those who are tuning in, I'm grateful to have you. And I'm wanting to just give you a final word of encouragement and prayer this morning as I was reading through a new Bible study that came to my attention and I'm grateful for. And I'm going to leave you on this note. And then I will see you right here back on Thursday as we bring a new guest to the forum. We talk about education, the next generation, and what is ahead for 2023 in our school systems. But I want to leave you on a final word. I was just given this amazing Bible study, and I want to share this with you, and I'll let you go. Study to show yourself approved. Top 5 tips for persevering when learning a new skill. 1, remember that your contribution is valuable. 2, lean not on your own understanding. 3, find an organized step-by-step approach to learning your skill. 4, recognize that persistence does pay off more quickly than you might expect. And 5, relax and enjoy the process. And that is on a new resource, and I'm going to be posting that on the feed as we speak, so you guys can have that resource. It is a free resource. It's all devotionals, and it's a 31-day devotional. I just posted there for you, each and every one of you. So on that note, be strong, be courageous. I'll see you back here on Thursday. Thank you for joining Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. Have a great week and Happy New Year to each and every one of you.